So I think we're on.
Mhm.
I think.
Let me check.
Anyway, today I'm gonna be talking about Jaguars and how Jaguars were viewed in what we know today as Mesoamerica, which in fact was ancient Mexico and ancient Central America, which is the Anahuac. So,
Yes, you're on.
thank you. So yesterday I was talking about Jaguars in Spanish because yesterday was the International Day for all things Jaguars. And when I'm talking about Jaguars, I'm not talking about the cars. I'm talking about the actual animal, proper Jaguars, and these cat feline animals that influenced greatly in Mesoamerican culture, art, and history. That's why that's the name, the title I gave to this lecture, which is again, this is the English version live. I'm live right now giving this lecture, but yesterday I gave it in Spanish. So I promised the English speaking people I will be giving it today in English. So we're gonna start anyway because this is a live stream. You can watch it later and review whatever things we see. But anyway, so we're gonna start here with this image of the how the Olmecs used to have this view of Jaguars. So this is one, and here's another one. Let me let me see if this works. Yeah, it works. So I'm starting with the Olmecs because the Olmecs were the first and foremost people and culture, if you will, of ancient Mexico and ancient Central America. Now, one of the reasons I say always, including ancient Mexico and ancient Central America, it's because back then there were no borders like we know it today. I mean, after colonialism, all the borders between Mexico and Central American countries uh, didn't matter. I mean, it was all one huge culture. I'm talking about a culture, and I'm talking about the people. So back then, our indigenous ancestors had the same culture, and in some instances, the same language, like in the case of the Mayan people, but all of it stemmed from the Olmec tradition. So the Olmecs were the first and foremost, and they had their mainland mainland country, if we can say that, southern Veracruz, which is a state in Mexico, Tabasco, which is another state in Mexico, but from there they expanded all across Mexico and Central America, like for instance Guatemala. So there are a lot of Olmec sites in Guatemala as well. By the way, they are discovering new ones, but that's another topic. So what we see here, it's a Jaguar. Again, I'm doing this lecture in Jaguars because yesterday was the International Day for Jaguars, and so we're gonna be talking about them. So one of the reasons we know this is a Jaguar because of the shape of the mouth, and there's this idea that it was not only a Jaguar, but perhaps a Jaguar slash toad, perhaps, or even a more ancient sea monster. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later about this sea monster and the link with jaguars. But jaguars, as such, were this connection to the Earth. And when I'm saying Earth, I'm not talking about the round planet. I'm talking about land because there's a difference between the sea or the lakes, the sky, and actual land like mountains and grassland and what have you. Okay, that's where we live. So let me move this slide. Oh, so before I move this slide, you can see these two images. They share something in common. On the top of their head, they have this kind of indentation, but it's actually an opening. You can see here. It's actually like a V-shaped opening that, in this case, we can clearly see how a plant, a five-leaved plant of sorts, probably, I don't know, a flower, but I'm saying plant just for the sake of it, and it's coming from the actual head of this jaguar-like entity or jaguar-like figure. Now, another issue, like I said, this V-shaped opening, we can also see the mouth. It's actually toothless in this case. You can see again, toothless without any teeth. You can actually see the gums. What you see inside, in the middle of the mouth, it's the toothless mouth, the toothless gum. So Olmecs also made and produced a lot of things Jaguar related, like this feline-like teeth that, but they're actually man-made. They're not actual Jaguar teeth, which is really interesting because, I mean, obviously they had access to jaguars because back then in Mexico and Central America there were many jaguars, even in the southern part of the what we know today as Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. So we're gonna see a map about the distribution of jaguars back then. But I mean, they also made these artifacts reflecting this idea of creating things around, I mean, creating artifacts and art that resembled whatever jaguars looked like or had, or like this teeth. Now, here's an image. Here's an image that we can see, and I'm bringing it up for a reason. You can see this creature that resembles a jaguar because of the ears, the nose, everything. But the interesting thing it's the mouth. So it looks really strange, that mouth. And if you remember, remember the openings on the top of the head of these ones. So this is not Olmec, by the way. This is not Olmec. This is way, like, thousands of years after the Olmecs, and they're depicting this jaguar-like figure or creature with this position like this, and the legs, forelegs like so, the mouth with that reverse V-shaped form. But that's not all. It looks a lot like this one. You see, you can see the actual position of this jaguar-like figure with this Mexica Aztec god of earth, which is Tlaltecutli. Now, this is a god slash goddess. Now, that's an issue because that's why it's such a problem to call them gods. And I've always said this, that maybe they're spirits, maybe they're even something different, and actual representations and manifestations of nature, phenomena of nature. But academia always tells us that there are gods and goddesses. So the first problem is this one, because this is a god but can also be a goddess. So which is it? Obviously it's not up to decide at the last minute. It's actually to oh, I have a the Grouch 79 says, I finally caught you live. Yes, I'm doing lives now again, Am I still live?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm doing lives because if for those that don't follow me on TikTok, TikTok had me shadow banned just for talking and showing uh, Aztec female indigenous statues. So they thought they were quite provocative. I don't know, which they're not. But it's not my fault that our ancestors are, I don't know, good looking. So for me, it's kind of awkward that they shadow banned me on TikTok, but not actual nude or semi nude uh, girls twerking. But that's the way TikTok is. At least YouTube, it's more open. So yeah, I'm gonna try and do more lives. And another reason I'm doing a live, not just because of the Jaguars, it's because a few days ago I just reached 20K, 20,000 followers. So this is sort of a way of saying thank you because I'm gonna bring more quality into my videos. And I'm not just talking about graphics or coolness, but I'm talking about quality in content, like more in depth for those who might be already in the know. But I'm gonna also try to do some more beginner stuff for all things ancient Mexican. So yeah. Anyway, where was I? So this figure, as you can see, where is it? Yeah. So this figure, it's considered to be a god or a goddess of Earth. And like I was telling you, it resembles a lot to this other, like Jaguar like. So wait, if we're talking about a god, how come in this um, monument, because this is an actual monument that was discovered actually quite recently, and it's huge, it's gigantic. It's you have to in the Mexico City Museum, you have to actually be on top of it, and that's why they have it like you can see it up because it's huge in order to admire it. And yeah, so how come this is a human looking entity, but this is a jaguar? So if we're talking about gods and goddesses, there has to be like a revision of what they were. And one of the proposals I actually liked was that they can be referred more, or they resemble more like spirits of nature or even ghosts. But that's another topic. I'm gonna talk about that later on, another opportunity I have. But something to note here is that the hands and the elbows, the kneecaps, and the feet, they have these eyes, and they're not skulls. I mean, if you look closely, they look like little feline little monsters. And personally, me, it also reminds me of the Nuhu in the Mixtec. In Mixtec culture, there was for millennia this idea of the Nuhu, which are these beings, these entities linked to all things earth and earthly. And when again, like when I'm saying earth, I'm not talking about the planet. I'm talking about the land and the subterranean, like all things below, like caves and cave systems and mountains and what have you. So there's again another mysterious image of this quote unquote god of earth, of all things earthly. And you can see this monster like mouth opening. But if you don't know anything about it, you will think it's a monster or something. But it's actually an opening, representing an opening of the cave of a cave. That's almost it's like resembles almost exactly as the glyph for cave in central Mexico. Now this is more of the Puebla, Tlaxcala, Mixtec tradition, that later on was used to create ancient codices in what we know today as the Aztec Empire. So this is what we would call the post-classic, more of like the post-classic art than in this case, for instance. Like this case is pre-classic. This is post-classic, and again, it would look like more of a post-classic, but actually a lot of codices. Codices is the plural of codex, which were our books. Now that's the academic term because our ancestors, our indigenous ancestors, had books, but for some reason scholars don't call them books. And sometimes even me talking about this, I slip and say codex or codices, but they're actual books. So anyway, yeah, they represent this image of cave-headed man or cave-headed figure. And you might say, well, what does this has to do? I mean, what's the reason of talking about jaguars if we're gonna be talking about these monsters and these cave figures? By the way, here's another one. Again, this cave-like mouth opening. You can see the bifurcation tongue going down, the feline kind of forehead, the little paws and arms. You know, it kind of looks like if a jaguar is looking in towards you. And yeah, it has a lot to resemble like this one or this one. And there's more. And the plot thickens because now we have Tlaloc. And if you don't know Tlaloc, Tlaloc is in Nahuatl. It means just water, rain. It actually is rain. We know it as the god of rain, or the spirit of rain, or the manifestation of rain. But again, Tlaloc, it has the same pose, like arms up, legs down, like squatting almost. Yeah. And you know it's Tlaloc because it has the teeth, the three round. But can you see on the top those three circles? Well, that's reminiscent from the Teotihuacan era. So if you feel like I'm throwing out names, Olmecs, Aztecs, Mixtecs, and now Teotihuacan, it's you're actually correct. I mean, it can be confusing unless you know that everything and everyone was interconnected culturally. Now, one thing is to be connected culturally, but another thing is that they could have been different ethnicities. People spoke different languages through time. After all, we had 5,000 year written history plus. By the way, it's like a little bit more than 5,000 written history that we have. But for the sake of being more concise, that's why I always say 5,000 written, a span of 5,000 years written history. And during that time, there were a lot of languages, a lot of kingdoms that rose, and but basically the ideas all remained. And even if we know Tlaloc as Tlaloc, for instance, for the Ñañú, it's Muye. So there's a difference. And for the Maya, it's Chak.
Did you see the comments?
No, I haven't seen the comments. Is there comment? Oh yeah.
Oh, she's nice.
HC says, "Thank you so much. That's so exciting." Yeah, well, uh, today I'm gonna be doing this live in English. Hoy voy a hacer este live en inglés porque ayer lo hice en español. So yesterday I did this lecture in Spanish. Now let me continue. So now we go. Remember I was talking about Teotihuacan? By the way, thank you, HC. Thank you so much. Gracias, HC. So remember we were talking about Teotihuacan and how everything's linked. Oh, by the way, in the middle of the Tlaloc belly, you can see the quincunx. That's called a quincunx. So a quincunx, it's this circle with other four circles or kind of looking circles that, but in the end, it makes like a cross, an actual cross. But that's an actual cross. It's like I mean it's not like this. It's like this. But also, besides the cross, it's reminiscent of the Venus glyph that we see with the Maya. So yeah, that's the quincunx, and we're gonna be talking about the quincunx as well. But back to the issue of jaguars. So why am I putting Quetzalcoatl? Quetzalcoatl. A lot of English people call it. English-speaking people call it Quetzalcoatl, but it's Quetzalcoatl. That's how it's pronounced, Quetzalcoatl. Now, in this case, I'm gonna say something really, really stunning. But in this case, Quetzalcoatl, or like English speaking people say Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl, something like that they say. Um, in this case, we see this quote unquote god with a strange head. It doesn't look like a snake. It doesn't look like a serpent. It looks more like a jaguar. And you can see the ears, round ears I was talking about. You can see the eyes, but also the nose. It's stunning to see this part of the mouth as well. Uh, it looks more like a jaguar, or it could be a jaguar snake jaguar. I don't know. But here's another interesting thing that we have to note, that this Quetzalcoatl, it's connected to Tlaloc. So we see again Tlaloc. Remember we were talking about Tlaloc? We see here Tlaloc. Now here, Tlaloc is squatting almost like this jaguar. But then we see this jaguar-headed Quetzalcoatl with Tlaloc. So it's almost like always going full circle. And that's something I say to people. It can be difficult to understand the thought and philosophy and especially religion from our ancient ancestors, but the key is to know that it always goes round and round. I mean, it's not so deep. It's more of understanding how everything is interconnected. And we see Tlaloc, we see the serpent, but we also see the feather snake thingy. That's actually primordial water from when time was created, or more like the universe, like the whole world was created. And we can see its water because there are shells. You can see actually a conch. There's a difference between a conch and a shell. A shell, this is an easy way to remember a difference between a shell and a conch. The shell is like the gas station, just like that shell. If you're not in the US, I don't know how to explain, but in the US you have the Shell gas station, and you see the logo. There's the logo. I mean, it's like a Where's Waldo thing, but you can find the logo there. I don't know if that you can see it. By the way, my wife is here checking things out,
Yeah.
and you can you see the logo?
Actually, no. Where is it?
No, you can see it.
No.
I mean, I'm gonna try and yeah, it's here. Look.
Oh my God.
It's next to the. You see the Quetzalcoatl head?
Yeah.
It's
Oh yes.
it's to his lower right. His lower right. That will be our lower left, and you can see a shell, a tiny shell, it actually is not tiny. If you've been to Teotihuacan, um, it's sort of like this size, like this. So because the thing is huge, it's gigantic, and you can actually see more here. Yeah, I mean,
Up there.
yeah, yeah, and you can actually see how it resembles this primordial sea or primordial water from where all things were created. You were telling me there's a comment.
Yes.
Gonna go back to the shell and the conch. The Skinny Killer says, "What do you think we can do to help Mexicans that Native Americans love love your culture and not hate themselves?" Sorry, it's not related. Okay, so first, my first idea would be to just learn our stuff. That's the thing, because when we Mexicans learn what Native Americans believe, it's a lot of things match, and the same goes for Native Americans in the U.S. or in Canada. When I talk to them, I've talked to a lot of people here in Canada, the Mohawks, about my culture, and when we exchange the all of this, what I'm talking about, they say that they have almost the same things. So it's and they have said this to me. It's easier to relate to us than to other people, like, I don't know, Europeans. So back to the topic. So now I'm gonna tell you a story. So a lot of people like these mythological stories about the creation of the world and the primordial waters, the primordial sea. You can actually see the sea, and there's also a shell there. You see the shell now, under the figure. By the way, that's Tezcatlipoca. So to know a shell, the difference between a shell and a conch. So the shell looks like the logo of the gas station. That's it. But a conch is like the ones people like make music, like this one. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see those in the middle, the large ones,
Yeah.
large, long, elongated. Those are conch. I'm just pointing. There's another conch there. That's a conch. I don't know if you can see it. You have to be like really detailed. The devil is in the details, and literally it literally is, or it couldn't be, because that's how the Spaniards got all confused, because they didn't see the details. They just see these, for instance, and say, "Oh my God, these people, they made sacrifices to animals to cut their feet and honor the gods." Okay, no, I'm gonna tell the story about this. So this image is one of the creation stories. Basically, it's the same creation story for the whole of ancient Mexico, Central America, and even south parts of the southwest of the U.S. But it's basically the same. The story goes the same, but it changes, like either the names or the chronology of things or details again. But usually, it's the same story. That in the beginning there was only sea and sky, a huge ocean, the vastness of water, and the sky. That was it. There was no land. There was nothing in between. So the two main spirits, or gods, or what have you, whatever you want to call them, uh, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl, in one story, in the for the Mayans, for instance, it was the two serpents, the two sacred serpents. Like I said, the story, there's a variation in each culture, but it's basically the same. Two figures, two spirits, um, coming together, but they now here's the tricky part. They themselves become more spirits in order to create the world. Now, one of the ways they came up with this idea of creating the world was by using that creature down. I don't know if you see that huge, gigantic. Well, it was actually gigantic monster, sea monster, and that sea monster used to come and up and down. So they said we need to lure him in order to create land, so we would only stay up and create land. That's Earth, where we would be living, humans and animals and trees. And Tezcatlipoca offered his leg as a way of entrapment and capturing this monster. So what we see in that image, it's not a human sacrifice, it's not whatever diabolical scheme the Spanish people may have thought. It's Tezcatlipoca luring with his leg this creature. But in the story, this creature actually caught the leg. So as they pull and push and fight, the creature is able to snap the leg out of Tezcatlipoca, but in the process, the monster damages his own jaw. So the monster, this is the jaw, but the monster loses its jaw, and that's why in every representation of Zipactli, it only has the teeth. I don't know if you can only see the teeth coming down, but you don't see the lower part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the also without the jaw, for some reason the monster couldn't go down again, because obviously the seawater would go in, and anyway, so the monster remained forever up, and that's how the continents were created. If you think about it, I mean, it's quite logical to think, first of all, that land moved. That's the first thing to have. So it's not like actually anchored to something in real life. In real life, science tells us that continents are floating in a sea of magma, of molten lava, well, magma, molten rock. So there's some truth in it, that where we live, it's actually floating. But not only that, that the monster, it's where we live. Like the mountains would be the equivalent of the shoulder of the monster, and the hair of the monster would be the grass, trees, and etc. So that's how the creation of the world, and when I say the world is land, was come to be. So that's Tezcatlipoca. That's why Tezcatlipoca is always represented with one leg, or at least they signal that there's something wrong with one of his legs. And like in this case, you see this jaguar. So Spaniards would think, oh my God, they believe in walking talking jaguars. And but if you note one of the legs, there's a smoking mirror under one of the legs. It's indicating us that something's wrong with one of its legs, and this is actually one of the representations of Tezcatlipoca. Here's the full picture. We see Tezcatlipoca in front of Quetzalcoatl. And we know it's Quetzalcoatl because not only we see certain like aspects of Quetzalcoatl, but the dead giveaway is the conch. This this huge pectoral shell like thing that it carries. That's the sign. That's the symbol of Quetzalcoatl. And in front of Quetzalcoatl, we can actually see a conch. And in front of Tezcatlipoca, we can see the symbol of, no, it's not Pokemon, it's the symbol of an eye, of an actual eye. You see the one in the almost in the middle.
Yes.
That's the symbol for star. That's the symbol for night or darkness. So we see here this duality of light and darkness, of life and death, of creation and destruction, of male and female, of all this duality that we know today in the world. And I mean, there were many mysteries like such in the belief system of our ancient indigenous ancestors. Like someone said, like Skinny Killer, who said it? Yeah, the Skinny Killer said, we're all related. We're natives. We're all natives, but it's just a difference of names and things like that. So we see again Tezcatlipoca here. We see the leg. I don't know if you can see, the leg has a round, like a circle surrounded with a red band. That's an obsidian.
It hasn't changed here. Wait.
It hasn't changed.
No, but it's because of the delay. Don't worry.
Okay, so another one here. So in the first one, I'm showing you the leg has a smoking mirror, an obsidian mirror, but also which indicates again darkness, something related to darkness. But it's interesting to note that in that leg we see that a jaguar is turning into a feet, almost like helping helping Tezcatlipoca as sort of a feat. But like I said, Tezcatlipoca lost his feet. And how did Tezcatlipoca lose his feet? When he fought and tried to capture the monster, the sea monster Zipacli. And we can actually see the sea monster Zipacli in under the other leg. You can see this crocodile kind of dragon looking monster.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say it's a crocodile or an alligator, but it's not. It's a monster. It's a, I would say a dragon. That's why I call it a dragon. But because if you see the, I mean, because crocodile would have feet. Other people say it's well, in Spanish we call it peje lagarto. And well, in my town, in my town we call them catan. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the world was created out of a catan. Imagine telling people that, especially Europeans or scholars for that matter. Now notice, I'm showing again Tlaloc because notice that Tezcatlipoca has this strange thing in front of his nose and mouth. Same thing as Tlaloc. What is it? I already said the quincunx. By the way, let me write it down on the chat because it's kind of weird, a weird name. Quincunx. That's how it's pronounced. Saint Luisito says, thank you so very much for your work, sir. We, who are proud of our forefathers, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Saint Luisito. So that's the way we write quincunx. In reality, we don't know the actual name of that glyph, of that shape, but we know it was used for a long time. And not only by one people, but the Mayans, the Teotihuacanos, the Aztecs, like everyone. And we see it in several different shapes and forms. And like I said, the quincunx creates the cross. And the cross also creates or resembles the Venus glyph. So in the end, it's a Venus symbol as well. But the quincunx symbolizes existence, the cosmos, the everything, the universe. And it's not surprising to know that it looks a lot like the US Native American symbol. Remember the circle with the cross inside with different colors? It's similar. It's eerily similar. So here's another example. This is Teotihuacan, a mural, and we see a jaguar. And we see a jaguar almost eating something that resembles hearts. And a lot of people say, well, that's proof that there were human sacrifices. Case closed. I'm going to talk about that and how, no, I mean. But yes, we see the jaguar, and hearts. What looks like hearts, or at least related to hearts. So the Jaguar, again, very popular amongst artists and philosophers back in the day. This is also Teotihuacan, and we see a Jaguar playing music or whatever through a conch, but above the Jaguar and the conch, we see five glyphs. So bear with me. Three of those is the symbol for the city of Teotihuacan, and two of them it's the Tlaloc Venus glyph. So let me start with Tlaloc. So remember, I was telling you the link of Tlaloc and Jaguars. Now we have a link of Tlaloc and Venus again. Remember this? So, oh, sorry. So that's the symbol of Tlaloc. We see Tlaloc, and the star, that five-pointed star, means Venus, but Venus in a military or militaristic manner. So whenever we see that symbol of Tlaloc slash Venus, like together, that's the symbol, military symbol, a symbol of war, a symbol of Star Wars. I'm gonna talk about the Star Wars later on and how not only Teotihuacan but the Mayans made it popular. But the Jaguar, it's almost like if it's playing a song, but it's not a happy song. It's more like a warlike song. It's a calling for battle. But from the conch, you see droplets of blood, and you see the sound emanating. And there's this idea amongst Teotihuacanos, or the Teotihuacan people, that war was a way of bringing all the bounty, good things to them. Now, let me explain why. Unlike Europe, Europeans always liked war just for the sake of it. I mean, you see Vikings fighting, you see the Visigoths, you see the Roman Empire. They're just fighting because they can. You can actually see it in the new movie of Napoleon. They're just fighting because they can. But for our indigenous ancestors, war was about capturing commercial routes and markets. I know it sounds, or may sound, a little bit odd, and I get it, because today we don't truly, I mean, we can truly understand it from a corporate point of view. And that's why a lot of scholars believe that Teotihuacan actually, at least the government, behaves sort of like a corporate, like a company. And instead, I mean, but the idea is ludicrous, but still there's this idea that the Teotihuacan ruler was more of a CEO than an actual emperor. But anyway, the way Teotihuacan behaved was truly about capturing foreign markets and controlling commerce in faraway lands, and especially capturing, like physically capturing, commercial routes. For instance, and I was telling this yesterday, uh, let's say Teotihuacan wants to control the route going to the north, to into the southwest U.S. So they go to Alta Vista. Alta Vista doesn't oblige, so there's war. So Teotihuacan conquers the Alta Vista routes that lead all the way to Arizona, New Mexico, and finally the region of Nevada, Las Vegas, and everything like that. And you would say, what? There's For Teotihuacan, there was no need to physically go all the way to Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California, because what they had to do was to control the route and the markets coming from there. And perhaps other markets behave well, and there was no need for war. But whenever markets didn't comply or oblige to Teotihuacan, there was war. Now, another thing about war is that unlike the Europeans or modern day US or whatever, or even in Africa or even in Asia, for us in the old world, because this is our old world, what we Mexicans have always known for thousands of years. Our new world is Europe, Africa, and Asia. So the way of doing war in our new world was fighting just to fight. But the way of doing war in our old world, in this land where we have lived forever, was doing war when there was no rain. And who controls rain? Tlaloc. Tlaloc. That's an easy answer. Tlaloc is linked to rain. Rain is linked to Tlaloc. So if you need something out of of this, you have to link Tlaloc. But not only that, you have to also link Venus, the planet Venus, because the movements of Venus would indicate you as a ruler when would be a good idea to go to war, because Venus would tell you that according to the movements of the stars, it's a good time to go to war. But also Tlaloc will tell you there's gonna be rain in certain seasons. So in the seasons when there was no rain, which was typically, not always, but typically between September, October, all the way to March, April, that's where there were no rain in what we know today as Mexico and Central America, and that was a good time to go to war. So, so yeah, that's why wars were waged when rain was not around. Another idea of this was because when there was rain, you had to be tending to your farms, to food supply, to prepare for the other half of the year, because half of the year you will be producing and preparing food, you will be producing and preparing weapons, and in order to create all of those things you need you know good, healthy, strong warriors. And actually, by the way, this idea of the warriors is linked to jaguars. So again, we see this idea of the jaguars eating hearts. We also see the eagles, by the way, but today we're focusing more on jaguars. This is from Tula, the Toltecs.
Analysis K.
Yeah.
Hi, Miguel. Congratulations for divulgation or ancestral culture, although it's intrinsically it is necessary to master an ancestral.
Analysis K. Hi, Miguel. Because Erica was reading to me, but I don't know if you're listening.
Oh, yeah. True.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read it. I like reading your comments, even though sometimes I don't respond. But Analysis K. Hi, Miguel. Congratulations for divulgating our ancestral culture. Although it's intrinsically, it is necessary to master an ancestral dominant language such as Nahuatl. Regards. Yes, it is. It is basic to, for me. This is my opinion. That's a good opinion, by the way. But in my case, I would say it's good to know the very basics, because you see a lot of people arguing, especially scholars, who don't even have a clue about our languages. For instance, they don't even call them languages. They call them what do they call them? Dialects. They call them dialects. I mean, that's just from the start for me. That person, if someone says or starts an argument saying dialect instead of language, for me that's so yeah, I get what you say, but at least there should be some understanding. At least El Grito Kid. Have you read Dioses del Jalisco Antiguo by Eric Gonzalez Rizo? No, I'm gonna read it. Do you recommend it? He talks about human sacrifice in Jalisco. Okay, I'm gonna research it. That's a good idea. The Grouch 79 says Tlaloc. Oh yeah, so he got it right. Yeah, Tlaloc is linked to water and to also the lack of it. because it's not just about rain, but when there's a lack of rain, who do you call? And not, it's not Ghostbusters. So here we see a jaguar eating a heart. Remember, I was telling you, jaguars are linked to warriors, so they had to be well fed. But people didn't eat hearts. So there's another way of interpreting this. I mean, having issues. By the way, I've been having some issues with my technical equipment. That's why sometimes I don't upload that much of the time new videos, but I'm gonna try and keep up. So here's another jaguar. By the way, this is Chichen Itza. I forgot. This is Chichen Itza, also made by the Toltecs, which is the same people as this Toltecs from Tula. So this is Tula in central Mexico. Um, it's a tourist destination, but not quite as Chichen Itza, which is next to Cancun. So here's a Teotihuacan jaguar. And here's more jaguars eating hearts. Heart eating jaguars galore. So the top three, those are jaguars. You can see by the ears, the nose. You can actually see that they are jaguars eating something that resemble hearts. And the lower part, you see these monster-like creatures, reminiscent of Quetzalcoatl, by the way, but also reminiscent of this sea monster eating hearts or something like that. Now, again, this jaguar has military traits on his fur. You can see instead of spots, you know that jaguars have these cool spots all over their body, but instead of those spots, they used in this Teotihuacan mural. This is a drawing, by the way. The mural is quite better, but more dilapidated because of time. I mean, by the way, it's almost 2,000 years. But anyway, you can see those almost star looking glyphs. Again, Venus. Remember, I told you the glyph in Teotihuacan for the planet Venus, and the idea of Venus, it's that star. And remember, we saw the star here. Remember the star here? Yeah. So there's that. So again, the jaguar linked to Venus, thus linking to war, and Venus linked to war. And Venus was viewed as part of the stars. That's why, in a lack of word for this idea of going to war according to the stars, archaeologists call it Star Wars. But note, this word came before the movie. So the movie, the title of the movie Star Wars comes from our own kind of wars, and that's the reason why in the first movie of Star Wars, I mean, I'm not a Star Wars person. I'm sorry. I'm gonna fumble here. I'm more of a Star Trek person. But in Star Wars, the very first movie, the one that came out in the, I think was in the 70s. I don't know. The very first movie that George Lucas made, you can actually see the Mayan ruins of Tikal used as the rebel base in the movie. Again, I'm not a Star Wars guy, but the rebel base, I think it's the home of Princess Leia, the one with the hair like this. By the way, this kind of hair that the Princess Leia used, it's also a Mexican way of doing the hair in Sonora and northwestern Mexico. So a lot of things was taken from our indigenous culture to create Star Wars, the movie, the franchise. And so we see this idea. So I'm gonna say when I say Star Wars, I'm not talking about the movie, okay? So this idea, yeah, because there's a lack of name, what name to give to this idea. So that's why I put this cover of this magazine from 1993, and it says Star Wars of Ancient Mexico. Yeah, that's correct. And actually, you see Teotihuacan. Now, why Teotihuacan in the archaeology cover? Even though Mayans and the Mayan people, especially Tikal and Calakmul, the two most powerful kingdoms, Tikal and Calakmul, the superpowers of the Mayan uh, entities, political entities, uh, they popularized the concept of Star Wars, of going to war according to what the stars say. Um, that idea came from Teotihuacan. And we don't know how further down in the past the idea might have come, but at least we know we can pinpoint in Teotihuacan this idea of Star Wars. And again, here's an image of Quetzalcoatl, or like researchers say, Quetzalcoatl. So we can see here Quetzalcoatl. Like I said, I propose it's the head of a jaguar. And talking about jaguars again, do you notice something here? And it's not, I'm not talking about the blue guys. It's the jaguar clothing. Now we see a male warrior from Cacaxtla in Tlaxcala, but we also see a female warrior because back then there were female warriors and young girls. When I say young girls, I'm talking 18, 19 years old, 17. The Grouch 79 says, El Castillo Chichen Itza was a long hike. Yeah, I went to Chichen Itza in 1997. And back then we were still able, I mean, we could go all the way up to the top of the El Castillo pyramid, which I hate that name. I hate that name. I mean, it's a Kukulkan temple linked to the seasons. Anyway, but yeah, back then, and I have a picture of it. I'm gonna post it just for people. Let's see if people can actually cancel me now, because a lot of people have tried to cancel me and they can't. From the left and the right, from Mexico and the U.S. Anyway, so here's yeah, like I said, a warrior and a female warrior, both warriors, but one is a guy, and we can see that because of the clothing. The dude is actually wearing something that resembles almost like shorts. It's almost like shorts. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a way of wrapping uh, their private parts, and we could say it's a loin cloth, but we know there were many styles. So, and you see, it has the tiny spots of a jaguar, and on top of the jaguar patterned loincloth kind of thing, there's this symbol. And if you remember what I said about this symbol, you know by now this is Venus. And you know by now that the planet Venus, it's strongly linked to war, at least for our indigenous ancestors. Then we have the female warrior, sadly, was destroyed either by, I don't know, by time or whatever, or by someone. But you can see she has a skirt. It's an actual skirt. And again, the same jaguar pattern with black spots. And what's on top of the jaguar pattern skirt? This symbol of Venus. And you can actually see not only small symbols of Venus, like tiny stars, but also in the bottom. What do you have in the bottom? The primordial sea. You have the, oh yeah, the scorpion tail as well. Yeah. The Grouch 79 is commenting that he saw the scorpion tail. Yeah, that's interesting to note as well. And yeah, it looks kind of cool actually. It looks kind of cool. But yeah, underneath the feet and the scorpion tail, it's the primordial sea, the sea from where the world was created. And we can see actually the aquatic animals. You can see a heron, you can see a fish. I see a crab, a snake, what looks like a snake. I see what's that? A turtle. You can actually see a turtle. That's cool. What's that? Looks like a snail. Probably no. That's another thing. I don't know what's that. Yeah, like a marine kind of That's another. I think that's another heron. In Spanish, we call them garza. And there's a fish or a cosil. I don't know what that is, but anyway, a shrimp. Maybe it's a shrimp. Yeah. By the way, back then there were a lot of animals in central Mexico that no longer exist, or at least they don't exist. Now they don't exist as much as they were back in the day, like the axolotl, like the acosil, the teporingo, the obviously the otter. The water otter was really nice. It was really cute. For some reason, Spaniards detested it. I don't know why. But yeah, there were a lot of animals back then that either don't exist anymore, or if they do exist, it's like almost done. Almost done. And yeah, that's why I was telling you about that shrimp like. I don't know if that's a shrimp like, because acosiles, they can still be eaten today in Mexico, at least in Mexico City. Um, Here's a jaguar again. If you didn't know that stars are linked to the planet Venus and to military and all things warfare, you would say this is a jaguar, like a cute jaguar, you know, in a like America's Got Talent or whatever. But no, those stars are more linked to war. And here's another jaguar. Now, here's an interesting thing about this jaguar, that it has net. It's called a netted jaguar because instead of spots, it has these like patterns of lines intertwining. And this netted jaguar is linked to water, but subterranean water, to subterranean rivers and phreatic layers underneath from where water comes from. Because if you remember, when it rains, water comes to the ground, but it goes down below the ground. And that's how, by the way, caves are formed. And that's why the jaguar is also linked to the caves. Remember, in the beginning, way in the beginning of this lecture, we were talking about caves and how the Olmecs made these indentations in the head of each jaguar or whatever, or the facial expressions that look like caves. And that's why the cave is a symbol of all things beneath our our ground, and everything subterranean as well. By the way, we know that this is linked to subterranean water because, amongst other things, we can see two hands like this. Well, it's more like this, I don't know. Anyway, those hands represent Tlaloc. I know it's crazy, but in Teotihuacan, that's how it worked, the writing system of the Teotihuacanos. So it's linked to water. We don't fully understand quite yet how glyphs and symbols linked each other, because at least we know there are two um, nouns, if you will, here in this image. You see the netted jaguar, but we also see the symbol for water. So we don't truly understand yet how to read it, if you will. A different thing with the Mayans. Uh, the Mayans, we actually know how to read, and we know how to see how all data was written by the Mayans. That's why we know, for instance, when battles happened and who was born with, I don't know, who married who, whatever. So we're still struggling with Teotihuacan language. And one of the things is that we have murals, but murals in Teotihuacan, which is these painted walls, either they are really, really like worn out, or they are still being discovered as we speak. There's still things discovering. Like, for instance, in Chichen Itza right now, we were talking about Chichen Itza with the Grouch 79. Where's the Grouch 79? Yeah. So Grouch 79 says, was saying about El Castillo, Chichen Itza. So they just discovered a new thing in Chichen Itza. They dug up in front of the El Castillo pyramid, which is the Kukulkan pyramid, and whoa, and behold, there's a lot of structures beneath. So if you've been to Chichen Itza, it's different now because they've made all these um, all this digging up, and they discovered a lot of structures underneath where we actually walked. So a lot of things also in Teotihuacan, by the way, because Teotihuacan is huge. They're still discovering a lot of things, and we need more data. Here's another Jaguar with this symbol, heart symbol, probably. Another Jaguar. We can actually see the droplets of blood, but again, the symbol of noise. So the Jaguar is saying something, or maybe grouching, rare, something. There's something, that symbol. I don't know if you can see it. In Spanish, we call it virgula, virgula, but that symbol symbolizes sound, like sound waves. Remember, you have to remember, back then our ancient ancestors knew a lot about sound waves. And you can, if you've been to Chichen Itza, or if you've been to any of these places, you know that there are certain spots where you clap and you can actually hear animals. Or if you there's a place in Chichen Itza where if you go near a wall, so let's say here's a wall, and I whisper something, it would be heard all the way across the city. How does that work? We don't know, but it has to do with acoustics, and that's why we know that they knew about sound waves. And it's actually eerily interesting that the way they represented sound waves look a lot like the actual shape that sound makes. And not only sound, scientifically also, all things create waves, but that's physics. That's not my department. Here's another Jaguar, again with the heart and dripping blood, and also saying grrr. It's also a netted Jaguar, by the way. You can actually see the pattern, so it's linked to underground water. Now here's an ancient book. This is a Mixtec book. We call it today Codex Tonindeye. And again, when I say codex, it's actually a book. So this book is called Tonindeye because it comes from that region in the Mixtec, in Oaxaca, from the Mixtec region. So we can see that our ancient ancestors had a lot of books. Actually, they had libraries where they kept books and maps, and even accounting books, even genealogy books, and all kinds of data that that were kept. And they were also used for school. They were also used for reference as well, depending on the kind of book. Now this book was a history slash genealogical book, and it tells the story, or the origin story, if you will, of not only the kingdom of Tonindeye, but also the great warrior Eight Deer Jaguar Claw. That's his name. We're gonna see about him. So this is one of the pages. Now, why am I showing you the book? Not only because I'm gonna show you some jaguars, but also books were covered with jaguar skin, with jaguar hide. So basically, books back then were by our ancestors made these books with amate paper, and some of them were also um, created with some kind of leather, what have you. But generally, they were made out of paper, like today, and they were covered in jaguar skin, and they painted on it, and you can see the paintings. And you can see here, now I'm gonna tell you about the imagery, that there's a person on the top. There's actually two persons on the top who are sitting in jaguar thrones. Those are jaguar thrones. The Grouch 79 is saying in the chat, it was majestic. My favorite was the ball courts. The Grouch 79 is also saying the acoustic is incredible. My trip started. My journey. Yeah, I understand his journey into finding about our ancestors. Yeah, sometimes these kind of trips uh, start this interest, and I understand. I completely understand. So anyway, on the top you can see what looks like a woman. It's actually a woman. You know, you can see the skirt, but she's sitting in a Jaguar throne, and a male with a Jaguar helmet. He's also sitting in a Jaguar throne. You can actually see in the case of the male, the tail. Can you see the tail in the back of the throne?
Yes.
Yes, because the throne, the power was linked to the Jaguar and vice versa. The Jaguar was a symbol of power. Okay, let me continue. So, oh yeah, so there's a bigger picture. You can actually see better these Jaguar thrones. Yeah, because for the mix. Oh, there's another one in the middle. You cannot see it because I'm here. Let me move myself here. So let me put myself next to this guy, and you can see next to me there's this person, saying whatever, and he's sitting also in a throne made out of Jaguar. And bear in mind that Jaguars were not as uncommon as they are today. There were a lot of Jaguars back then, but they linked this idea of Jaguars to power so much that thrones were made out of Jaguar hide skin. So here's another image. Yeah, I have it bigger. So let me first explain here. Yeah. Okay, so first I'm gonna explain here what you see here. It's an explanation of a war. This is the war that came from the heavens. That's the name of the war. And you can actually see these beings coming from the sky, almost like in Avengers. Yeah, I don't know why Hollywood always uses what we what our references. And anyway, so there's an opening in the sky, and from the sky there are coming these beings, and you see in the bottom there's these human-like figures capturing some of these beings, but a lot of beings of these entities of these figures escaped, and they caused chaos. You can actually see the battles. This is a listing of all the battles that took place out of this war, the war that came from the heavens. We don't know the real name of the war, but that's how we call it, the war that came from the heavens, in reference to this episode in Mixtec history. Now, this book dates from the around the year 1000, give or take a couple of centuries. But this war might have happened around the year 600. So that's why a lot of people say that perhaps they were not aliens, or they were not, I don't know, creatures from space, but perhaps this is a representation of a revolution or a war upheaval that happened when Monte Alban, the most powerful kingdom in Oaxaca, fell. As Teotihuacan fell in the year 600, and as Tikal and Calakmul fell with the Mayans, so every big nation fell. Also, Montalban fell. And so basically, what we see here is battles broke out everywhere. A lot of theories about why these nations fell and how chaos ensued. One theory is climate change. And actually, NASA provides proof of this, by the way. I mean, I know a lot of people today talk about climate change, and it's almost like woke religion. But back then, there was uh, also these instances of climate change where people starved to death out of nowhere, and this process of desertification happened, and Teotihuacan fell, Montalban fell, all the Mayan kingdoms fell, and we see proof of how chaos ensued. So this is the lacking of the powerful states ensued chaos. So there's a restructuring of political power, and we saw this war, the war that came from the heavens. And a lot of people were saying to me in Twitter, you know, here's proof of how our ancestors did human sacrifices. And there's, you can see this figure. Let me show you. So I want to be really clear about this. And I was having this debate. Oh my god, I cannot. Wait, hold on. So here's where you see me. Okay, next to it, that's the image they were telling me in Twitter. Oh, you know, you're always saying we don't have any proof of human sacrifices. Well, how about this? And they show me this image of this figure with, by the way, a Jaguar helmet, killing a poor stoneman. Those are called stonemen. We don't know who they were. We don't know. But we know that Mixtecs waged war against these creatures or these people known as stone people, stone men made out of stones. Anyway, so we see this image of it, an actual execution. But for some reason, people see human sacrifices. And what we've talked about this in other videos, that our indigenous ancestors went to war, yes, but not for this idea of killing each other in battle. It was more about capturing your enemies and bringing them down with you. And these captives will bring you prestige. And actually, for instance, the Aztecs, the Mexica Aztecs, depending of how many people, enemies, you've captured in war, you would go up in the military echelons. And we have instances also with the Mayan. Yesterday I was talking about this Mayan queen, Huachanil Ahau, who since her teenage years, bear in mind, a girl, a princess in her teenage years, capturing seasoned warriors. Yeah, so we're not talking about just any dudes, but buffed, trained warriors being captured by these 17, 19, probably 19-year-old princess when she refounded the kingdom of Naranjo in Guatemala. So we see this idea that enemies were captured in order to bring them down with you and give them an honorable death. Because that was the idea behind war. Not only waging war for political or economical reasons, like I was telling you, or simply because of descent, but also warriors. The way of the warriors back then was to capture your enemies, to bring them down with you and give them an honorable death so they can continue to the world, the sun world. That's what the belief was, and become a butterfly. And that's the whole idea. But what they see, I mean, even though you're seeing here the battle, and people, you see the battle, the battle starts here, yeah, and then we see even uh, we can see here how enemies are being captured. So here you can see enemies being captured. Here you see the stone people being captured. Here's a battle. This means that this person defended his town. Here, well, here. I don't know. You see this woman here? She's defending her town as well. You can actually see down here to this side. You can see in this side two stone people attacking and capturing a female warrior. So she's been captured in a hill known as the Tlaloc Hill. That's what we know according to this ancient book. And so again, proof that back then war wasn't about killing themselves as killing machines. They were not terminators. They were warriors, sort of. Yeah, I mean, sort of like these honorable culture of Japan or Korea or China back then, we also have these similar ideas of having honor, and even in war. So yeah, this for me, let me see here. Yeah, so for me, this is really cool how stone people were capturing um, this woman, this female warrior. So now we have this. Let me put myself back. Let me put myself back in place. And you see again a lot of people. This is, I mean, if you're not savvy in all things Mixtec codices, you might actually get lost and in sort of a Where's Waldo thing. But if you see down to this corner, where's this corner? Down here, you can see again a person with a Jaguar helmet. So yeah, Jaguars were pretty much everywhere. We can actually see the name of. Let me show you again. Here, next to me, there's a Jaguar with a lot of dots. That's the name of Ocoñaña. He was a famous person. So here's the biggest, most famous person in the Mixtec history, which is warrior 8 deer Jaguar claw, and you can see his name, 8 dots and a deer, and in the other side you can see the claw, his name, Jaguar claw. That's his name, the claw, and he's wearing, obviously, honoring his name. He's wearing a helmet made out of, a pattern of a Jaguar pattern. I'm struggling to tell you that what I'm trying to say is that back then those helmets and those headdresses were made out of feathers. They were not actual, Jaguars, for instance. It was made out of feathers and different jewels or stones. And we know this because not only we have these Jaguar helmets, but we also have helmets of other things like eagles and ghosts, and we have a different kind of warriors. But this is the most famous one, obviously, the Jaguar helmet. It's one of those famous ones. Anyway, so this is a deer Jaguar claw. He was the Yakanu, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords of the Mixtec. Are the green bell looking painting mountains? Okay, so what else? What else? And remember, I told you that Jaguars are linked to power, and especially power, political power. So we see here 8 deer Jaguar claw. This is 8 deer Jaguar claw. But here we see him in Cholula in this ceremony where one of the Quetzalcoatl priests, by the way, Quetzalcoatl was present during this ceremony, and we can see it's the pyramid of Cholula. On the top of it, they're having this ceremony where they putting the symbol of power in his nose. They with this bone tool, they would make a hole in the nose septum here, so they can put this symbol of power. But note the throne. I mean, I'm explaining everything what you are seeing because, like I said, someone else might say, it's like a Spanish person or whatever. There's, oh, here's more evidence of human sacrifice. No, it's the ceremony of putting this jewel in nose so they can project power. But the throne, again, the throne is made out of Jaguar hide skin. And here's again something reminiscent of Cholula, but this is Olmec. So this is Cholula. This is the Olmecs, and again they look eerily similar in the sense that it's almost like if this figure, person, or human, I don't know what, but he's a person, almost like swearing in some kind of political power or maybe warrior like job. I don't know. So this is not pre-contact. This is post-contact. This was made. What I'm telling you is this painting was made during the time of the Spaniards, but they were reflecting on how things were before the arrival of the Spaniards. And this, what we're seeing, it's a gladiatorial fight. And many argue, oh, this is another proof of human sacrifice. Again, the way of giving honorable death to those captured in war were in different ways. Some people just killed them. Like, where was it? Here. Just bring them to your temple, to your city, and say, you know what? You know, bro, I won, you lost, let me give you an honorable death, and they were killed, just like that. But in this case, it was more of a spectacle. You can see a person, a warrior, this is an enemy that was captured, and he's put, bound to that circle. He's bound. You can see the one of the foot is tied up, so he can't escape. And he's fighting with fake weapons against seasoned, highly trained warriors. So basically, obviously, this is gonna be a quick death. And even though we might think that, oh my god, this is surely it's gonna be quick, there are examples of warriors that survived this, or at least survived quite a bit. And there's an instance of a famous warrior, a warrior from Tlaxcala, who actually survived this. His name was Tlahuicole. So we know Tlahuicole, he was captured, big guy, warrior, by the Mexica Aztecs. He was brought to Mexico City, Mexico Tenochtitlan. He was bound to this gladiatorial um, scene, because it was like an elevated, in an elevated structure, and battle was held by Tlahuicole, by one warrior and several warriors. Nobody could kill Tlahuicole, even though he was using fake weapons. We can see those fake weapons here. This is a macuahuitl, and instead of the sharp blades made out of obsidian, because obsidian, it's just as sharp as glass, really strong cutting tool. But we see the macuahuitl here being used, but with cotton balls. So imagine that, being given a fake weapon that's not gonna be of any use to you, and you need to defend yourself as you can. Obviously, everyone died of these captive prisoners, but one survived. Who was it? Was Tlahuicole. And so Tlahuicole, he was so respected that he actually survived. We don't know how he fought. I mean, not even Jason Bourne would have been a match for him, and he was actually freed. He was set free. Tlahuicole was set free. So explain to me how human sacrifices fit in all this, even though he was the enemy, sworn enemies of the Mexica Aztec. He was captured in war according to these sacred ideals, the Tlaloc Venus ideals. He was brought to the city to be killed with all the honors possible, and yet he was set free. So that's something to consider. And we have Namita Gangal, Nutcracker drawings. El Grito Kid. Oh, you mean like those nutcrackers from... I don't remember those. I don't know what she's talking about. El Grito Kid. Weren't they killed as sacrifice, as an honorable death? Yes. Yes, they were. I mean, sacrifice, again, human sacrifice implies killing someone for the gods, or to bend the wheel of the gods, or to appease the gods, or to please the gods. That's human sacrifice, which you can see in the Bible, which you can see with the Greeks and in other places of our new world, would be Europe, Africa, and Asia. Here in the old world, we don't see, I mean, there's no proof of people killing people in honor of gods or because the sun's not gonna come up tomorrow. We don't see pre-contact evidence of that. That's what I'm saying. And even though people might argue with that, they always bring up this image. And this has nothing to do with making a human sacrifice to the sun god so that he may rise up tomorrow. And no, that's not how it works. No. So again, more Jaguar attire, this military attire. Another Jaguar warrior from Teotihuacan. This is from the Mexica Aztecs. This is from Teotihuacan. Again, another warrior from Teotihuacan. You can actually see the hand. Do you see the shield? And inside the shield, you can see the hand, which again is linked to Tlaloc, to rain. I told you that in Teotihuacan, these enigmatic hands were linked to Tlaloc, to the rain. Now here's another image of a Jaguar. A Jaguar. He's a warrior. Looks like a warrior. He even has a tail. This is from Teotihuacan. And you see Teotihuacan writing. So I was talking about this yesterday, that you can see what looks like a road. How do we know it's a road? Because it has footprints. So whenever we see footprints, that's a symbol for road. So the Jaguar's walking in a road. But wait, what's next to that symbol of footprints? You can see those oval circles. Those are eyes. And that symbol of eyes signifies water in Teotihuacan. So for Teotihuacanos, the glyph for water, it's that eye. And you can see this is a representation of a Jaguar walking a road of water. Again, linking Jaguars, for some reason, with water. Like I told you, in many cases, Jaguars, again, this is a netted Jaguar, a Jaguar with this pattern of lines. And like I said, those are connected with subterranean waters, like waters that come from caves, waters that run down inside mountains as well. By the way, I didn't show you, but one of the quote unquote gods of the Mexica Aztecs is called Tepeyolotl, and it's a Jaguar. It's a Jaguar, and interestingly enough, this spirit of mountains means the heart of the mountain, and it's a Jaguar. So again, this idea that the inside the mountain, the heart of the mountain, it's water. So here's another battle. This is the Azcapotzalco War. You can see two Jaguar warriors there. Obviously poorly painted because this is post conquest. This is not pre-contact. Okay, so a lot of people use this imagery to show whatever things they want to say about it, but this is not pre-contact. Like this is pre-contact. This is pre-contact, and you don't see anything about human sacrifices or pozole made out of human flesh. Now I'm in the mood for some pozole. So this is not a hamburger. This is the glyph for book, the Mayan glyph for book. So basically, if you're reading this in Mayan, this is just the word for book. That's it. Book. Why? Because remember I told you that books, even though they were made out of paper, amate paper, they were covered with Jaguar hide, Jaguar hide skin, the top and the bottom. So this, you can see this glyph. If I do this, this is actually, yeah, like this. So this is the Mayan glyph for book, and it's really neat because you can actually see the pictographic imagery of the book. It's sort of like when you go to the mall or to a restaurant and you want to go to the restroom I promise you, there's a reason to this story. So when you go to the restroom, you see two doors, but how do you know where to walk to? I mean, one's a girl and one's a guy, and usually the girl's restroom has like this figure of a skirt, which signifies women, and in the case of men, it's just like either a skinny guy or a poorly, stick man. That's a guy. So pants versus skirt. That's the idea. And when you go to find a restroom, so that's similar to this. When back then Mayans saw this image, they knew, oh, that's a book, because they knew what a book looked like. For us, it looks more like a Burger King logo, but for them, it was the image of a book they saw every day, or at least not every day that they knew. Just as I know today in the 21st century, what's the difference between a skirt and pants, to differentiate when you go to the restroom and not end up uh so they don't end up calling the police. So here, this is a journal. If you don't know about journals, this the Grouch 79 says, "Laugh out loud." LOL. Yeah. By the way, if you don't know why I always tell jokes, I'm always like that. I don't know why. I need to change. But anyway, so in all seriousness, when I'm studying everything about our ancestors, one of the things we consult as anthropologists are journals. By the way, I haven't introduced myself again. This happened to me yesterday.
Yeah.
Haven't introduced to me. You know how I always prefer to talk about the topic instead of me, when I even forget myself about telling you who I am. So anyway, I'm an anthropologist, an artist, a writer, and a direct descendant of Netzahualcoyotl. That's who I am.
You're
And
missing one.
I'm missing one.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm an anthropologist, an artist, a writer, a direct descendant of Netzahualcoyotl and of Malinche.
Saw
Yes,
you.
Malinche as well. So, well, obviously more people, but I'm not gonna. I wouldn't be. So, what we in anthropology and what have you, when we consult information, we use these boring-looking journals. So even if you go to college, again, even the most menial homework will eventually lead you to one of these really, really boring but useful journals. So this is one, for instance, a journal. This is what a journal looks like. It's a lot of image, but sometimes I go to the abstract. The abstract is what I always tell people: go to the abstract to know what the journal is about. I mean, if you're unless you're looking for a really obscure reference inside a specific journal, the abstract always tells you the dead giveaway of what they're talking about. In this case, they're talking about jaguars and how even nowadays, this was published in September 2010, and even today, this it says during May 2006, March 2008, we conducted 22 field surveys, including interview of locals, residents, landowners, hunters, 42 communities. We're in the Huastec in San Luis Potosi state in Mexico. So what they obtained were records of jaguars, sightings of jaguars. Like, okay, what? 30, 34? Yeah, 34, 28, something like that. So anyway, their journal, this is more of a biological nature perspective of how even people research jaguars in an endangered species in Mexico and how they still exist in northern Mexico. Imagine in the Sierra Madre, the high mountains of San Luis Potosí and South Nuevo León. And there are still jaguars roaming. The scientific name for jaguars is Panthera onca. Panthera means in Latin panther. So Pantera means panther because they thought, for some reason, scientists, that they thought that jaguars were like panthers back in our new world, but here in our old world, jaguars were a different thing. But anyway, they call it panther or pantera. Onca means it was the name, ancient name for a cat-like or lynx-like feline cat in Portugal. I mean, that's how they roll. You know how science is always Western centered. But anyway, and so the scientists are telling us that they were even between 2006 and 2008 sightings of jaguars in the high mountains of San Luis Potosi. And you can see the abstract tells us of these that jaguars were recorded in oak forests, tropical forest, cloud forest, tropical. Blah, blah, blah. It has a lot of really scientific data so that you can even the locations of these El Naranjo, Xilitla, Ciudad Valles, that whole area. Anyway, this is the region where jaguars were back then. The pink color means were jaguars back in the day, and the red color, proper red color, is where sightings of jaguars today have been reported. And that's why you can see up in northern Mexico near Texas. That's the San Luis Potosi and Nuevo Leon region where there have been sightings of jaguars even today. But yeah, so they're an endangered species, and mostly the jaguars from Central America and Mexico. Um, there's not much anymore, and in the US they're gone. Like the jaguar, the data show us that they were at some point jaguars in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, the area of LA, but not anymore. Not anymore. So yeah, that's a very Mexican animal. This is a very Mexican animal. An animal that it's intrinsically linked to us for millennia, and sadly, it's almost gone. You can see the majestic animal. You can see the teeth, the power that you it reflects, and this is a huge. Sometimes they're called cats, but this is basically a killing machine if you think of it. And you know the spots, they look beautiful, flawless, and they made, like I was telling you and showing you, the thrones. They made their loincloths, their skirts. They made a lot of stuff with that leather, the fur that covers the animal, the actual hide leather. But especially because of the spots. But yeah, I mean, jaguars for some reason started to disappear, especially during colonial times when the Spaniards and the Portuguese arrived, and that's how they began to disappear. And today there's a lot of poaching, of a lot of illegal hunting, and a lot of things that are done outside the range of the law. But I don't like to use that word law because sometimes in Mexico and Central America, the law is barely applied even for humans, much less for animals or endangered species, in this case, the jaguar. So sometimes we've seen jaguars like this in the zoo. I've seen them like that, but the good thing about seeing them in the zoo is that you can actually see them. The bad thing about seeing them in the zoo is that they're not in their environment, and usually they're depressed or zoned out. So this is a difference between jaguars, which is the one in the bottom, with the leopard and the cheetah. So the cheetah and the leopard, they come from our new world. But in our old world, the jaguar, because they've been always with us for millennia. We're almost done. So we have the wildcats of North America, a lot of felines. So you can see the jaguar proper, but also the ocelot. Now, we see a lot of names from Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, the Mexica Aztecs, sticking with other animals. Like for instance, in Mexico, we still call mapaches the raccoons. We still call tlacuaches the possum. We have a lot of names that are still around. But in the case of the ocelot, the name for some reason didn't stick quite well, and instead we're using the word jaguar, which by the way, it's a native word, but it's not from Mexico, it's from South America. It comes from Jaguar, and yeah, basically it's still Jaguar, it's still an indigenous word, but from South America. So the only difference is that ocelot, what the name only was kept for that smaller, the smaller one you see, not the Pantera onca, but the other one, the smaller one. So scientifically, there are two different kinds of quote unquote jaguars. But for us, at least in ancient Mexico and ancient Central America, it was the same. I mean, if you saw the both of them, both are jaguars. But yeah, so ocelot didn't stick, and they used ocelot for the small one. And fun fact, for instance, in Minecraft, when you see the tiny, the cat-like animal in Minecraft, that's the ocelot. So today it's quite popular amongst gamers, Minecraft gamers, because of this issue. Pepe Vega says, currently writing my thesis on the impact of Maya architecture today. Love watching your videos, and I'm glad to finally see you live. I love seeing how you do your research. It is very helpful to me. Yeah, well, I'm gonna, because like you said, Pepe Vega, a lot of people see these videos not just for fun. Maybe they're helpful in some way for your classes or your school. I'm gonna try and do how to do research. That's such a good idea. Really, really, I'm being honest. Promise you, that's a good point. But sadly, as you know, a lot of these research is being uh, zealously protected by academia. Hate Dogs says sorry. Hate Dogs says it's far from being Mexican. It's indigenous Mesoamerican. Yes, as well as from Guatemala, as well as from Belize, as well as from El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and in fact, I mean, if we go, let's see, remember the map? I mean, if we are truly realistic, it's a lot of Brazilian as well. I mean, the Jaguar is really Brazilian as well. Venezuelan, Colombian. You can see also in that's Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia. Chile doesn't have anymore. Argentina barely in the border with Paraguay. Uruguay doesn't have anymore. So yeah, when I say that's a good point, when I say that's a good point. When I say it's Mexican, it's correct. It's not just Mexican. It's correct. And actually, in all truthfulness, it's not Mesoamerican because Mesoamerica is the name used by academics. In other words, we could say that jaguars are truly an animal from the Anahuac, or that jaguars are the jaguar is an Anahuaca animal. In I mean, if we're being more politically correct, I don't know. No, I don't know how to say it, but more specific. Pink World says que no se usa la. She's saying, don't you use the word tlacuache to signify a person, to tell about a person that it's how do you say corriente, that it's not privileged, I don't know, or something like that. Thank you. Well, I haven't heard of it. For instance, I mean, I know, for instance, mapache, the word mapache, which is raccoon, is used in Mexico for people that steal things. And actually, the idea of mapache stealing things or being associated with with thieves comes from ancient Mexico and ancient Central America. So, in the case of Tlacuache, I haven't heard about it of being used as a derogatory term. So I would have to look it up. But at least for Mapache, I do. I do know that even politically, like whenever they have elections in Mexico, and they say like certain political party it's robbing votes because down there they actually go to, sometimes to physically steal ballots and what have you, and at least in my town, and that's in the border. So basically, yeah, I mean the border is like cultural wasteland. That's how it's described and aptly described. But anyway, whenever politicians say about people or political parties that steal ballots, they say they are mapaches. At least in my town. I don't know if you have any other references of any other animals that you people might know. So here we see cats from around the world, and we see obviously the lion. The lion is the king of the jungle in Africa. But we also have the jaguar, which is our Tlatoani. We see the leopard, we see the ocelot, the cat, I mean, all these cats. And we see the comparison between a human being and the two kind of jaguars that we can encounter here in the Americas. So in South America, Brazil, we see the bigger one. And for instance, in Belize and South Mexico, you would encounter the smaller one. But if you see, I mean, the smaller one, it's still big. It's quite big. And something to be respected. And I have another comment a little. Techotli. I didn't know we called thieves raccoons. That's hilarious. Yes, you can look it up. I mean, if you speak Spanish or write Spanish, you can check it out. Mapaches. They are called mapaches. And at least in my town, and I've heard about it from other states, whenever there's elections, they always say, "Oh, watch out for mapaches," or, but yeah, because for some reason there, the Mexica Aztecs associated raccoons with stealing people's food. So that's the reason why back then they were associated with that. Pink World says, okay, Pink World says, my family is from North Mexico, Chihuahua, and Sinaloa. Love your channel. Gonna do more stuff about Chihuahua and Sinaloa. Haven't done that much. I'm gonna do some videos about Casas Grandes and that whole region, which is quite interesting as well. I'm almost finishing up. My boss is telling me time's up. You know who my boss is. So this is Jaguar. So, and jaguars are a symbol of power as well, even today. We Mexicans and we people from Central America as well, both Mexicans and Central Americans tend to look down on our culture and look down on our own things, but even foreigners use our things. And this is an example. One of the most expensive cars in the world, it's called, Jaguar, and the animal is shown. Like I said, or like someone of you said, a Mesoamerican animal, an animal from the Anahuac, Mexican and Central American animal, indigenous animal from the Americas is used for one of the most expensive cars. And because the Jaguar shows power, and there's this idea of power, this archetype of power behind the animal, like I said, even from the times of the Mixtecs and the Teotihuacanos and the Mayans, and even today, just as our ancient ancestors, our kings of old, used to sit in thrones of jaguars. Now still, jaguars are a symbol of status and prestige. And voila, here's the this is the presentation. This is the lecture. I want to thank you all for being here live. And if you weren't live, please remember that I'm going to be doing more lives. There's another comment. San Luisito. The jaguar was always present in the religious representations in ancient Peru. Chavin culture, called the early horizon, is full of imagery of jaguars. Okay, so thank you so much. Yes, that's interesting to note. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I'm gonna try and do more lives with more in-depth content. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so we've reached 20K followers, 20,000 followers. That means that I have to up my game, and not only graphics quality, but I'm talking about this quality of giving you more information, more in-depth, more substantial information about our ancestors. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas coming up. There's gonna be also interviews. If you think you're interviewable, send me an email as well. If you speak a native language as well, or if you do any cultural work, or like someone who was Pepe Vega, who was writing a thesis, if you think personally that you are interviewable, please send me an email at my, here, I'm gonna write it down in the chat. The Grouch says thank you. Thank you as well for everyone that is seeing me. And Anahuac Encyclopedia at Gmail. And you tell me, Erica, if you're able to see it. Anahuac Encyclopedia at gmail.com. That's my,
Yes.
that's my email.
It's there.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. If not, you can also. I mean, in Twitter, probably I'm not gonna respond unless you send me a DM, or because there's a lot of trolls out there. So I usually, it's better if you send me an email. San Luisito says power to the Jaguar, and yeah, that's remember we have an emoji. We have an emoji of the Jaguar, so that's also cool to know. And yeah, so yesterday we had this lecture in Spanish, and today we just had it in English.
Are
So
you gonna have another one tomorrow
uh I don't know.
or next week?
Maybe next week. Maybe next week, because I'm gonna start also the interviews as well.
Okay.
And but yeah, I'm gonna have these kind of lives as well. So we're having these lives lectures. We're having the interviews. I'm gonna do also more videos in English as well as in French, because what I need is to spread out the knowledge. For me, that's the idea. So I want to thank you so much. And again, whenever you want, you can send me an email. So you can watch the entirety of the show and review whatever. If you have any questions, also let me know.
Oh, and are you gonna announce when are you gonna be? When
Yeah.
is gonna be your...
Yeah, well, I've been posting on Twitter, here on YouTube as well, and I've posted today, but I'm gonna try and post earlier on so that people are more prepared whenever I do some of these live lectures. But gonna try and do it
on TikTok too.
TikTok, yeah, I'm on TikTok as well. Yeah, thank you so. Yeah. Oh, by the way, since TikTok shadow banned me, so usually I did this live streams on TikTok mainly, but because TikTok banned me of doing lives because I showed statues of female Aztec women, um, for some reason, I don't know why, even though there was no nudity, so they shadow banned me. But I guess TikTok is okay to have nude white women shaking, twerking, or whatever they're doing nowadays. But yeah, since I can't do lives in TikTok, I would be more focused here on YouTube. And yeah, so basically this is it. What? Ah, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.